Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we'll be taking a look at and comparing both the Sony PlayStation and the Nintendo 64. But before we do that, we're going to go over the brief history on how the PlayStation came to be. The story starts in the early 90s when Sony was going to partner with Nintendo to make a CD-based add-on for the Super Nintendo, and then Nintendo made their biggest mistake as a company when they ditched Sony to create the CD add-on with their rival Philips instead. After being humiliated by Nintendo, Sony started to work on the console we know today as the PlayStation, and it was really successful, and it sold 102 million units, while the Nintendo 64 only sold 32 million. And it was the first time Nintendo didn't have a best-selling console. It shows that ditching Sony to work with Philips on the SNES CD add-on impacted Nintendo a lot as a company, because the CD add-on was never released, and Philips released some of Nintendo's properties on their console, and we know what happened with that. And due to this mistake, Nintendo has always been in second or third place in every console war after the failed relationship with Sony. That's enough brief history. Now let's get to the main event: the PlayStation versus the Nintendo 64. Round 1. The technical capabilities. The PlayStation has a 32-bit CPU that is capable of handling 3D graphics and full motion video. The 3D graphics have not aged too well, and some games had sharp edge models in place of smooth ones. The N64 contains a 64-bit processor and a 64-bit Reality coprocessor that was combined with a better polygon count and was capable of producing smoother 3D environments than the PS1. And the N64 can output in both composite and S-video. And with the expansion pack, some games supported 480i and widescreen. The N64 supports 16.8 million in colors and had 4 megabytes of RAM, which was 2 times more than the PS1. And that was before the expansion pack came out to add another 4 megabytes. The winner for technical capabilities goes to Nintendo 64. Round 2. Console design. When it comes to console design, the design for the PlayStation looks sleek and stylish, and it looks like it was made for the mature crowd, while the N64 looks childish and looks a lot less appealing to mature gamers. But the N64 had personality with its multiple colors and 4 controller ports compared to the PlayStation only having 2 controller ports. So the winner for console design goes to Nintendo 64. Round 3. The controller. The Nintendo 64 controller was very revolutionary for the time because it was the first ever controller to have an analog stick and rumble with the added rumble pack. And both of those features became the standard for every controller. The N64 controller has aged very poorly. The analog stick is fragile and can break after excessive use in games such as Mario Party. The controller design isn't the best, but it's still comfortable. The PlayStation controller originally had a controller design that was very similar to the Super Nintendo controller, with the added handles on the sides and the 2 sets of L and R buttons. It felt very comfortable to hold, but it wasn't good for 3D games such as Metal Gear Solid and Gran Turismo, so they released the DualShock in 1998, which had dual analog sticks and rumble support, and Sony kept using the same DualShock design for every one of their consoles and kept making improvements with each console until they went with the new controller design with the PS5, so the winner for controller design goes to PlayStation. Round 4. Graphics. When it comes to graphics, the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 look very similar, but there's some differences. The 3D environments often looked better on the N64 because of the bilinear filtering, and that's why the N64 had smoother graphics, but the PlayStation had better textures. The textures on the N64 would often look blurry due to the limited file sizes of cartridges, and most later PS1 games looked way better than any N64 game. For example, a game like Metal Gear Solid would not be possible on N64 with the cartridges. The N64 had the expansion pack, which added an extra 4 megabytes to the hardware, and it was capable of playing incredible looking games such as Majora's Mask. The winner goes to N64, but only barely. Round 5. Sound. There's no question on who's gonna win this round. The PlayStation blows the Nintendo 64 out of the water with its CD quality music, and when it comes to sound, Sony is highly experienced in the sound department. They made all the high-end speakers for home setups, and they made the first CD players when CDs were introduced in the 1980s. The PlayStation was also a really good CD player, and people bought PlayStation because it was an awesome CD player. That doesn't mean the N64 doesn't have good sound. The sound on the N64 sounds great, and it has some of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Here are some select soundtracks I decided to show off from both consoles. As much as I have nostalgia for the N64 music, the PS1 music sounds awesome, and it blows the N64 out of the water. The winner for sound goes to PlayStation. Round 6. The games. Both the PS1 and N64 had strong libraries of games. The PlayStation had Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Chrono Cross, Final Fantasy VII, the Crash Bandicoot games, Spyro the Dragon, Gran Turismo 1 and 2, Driver, the Resident Evil trilogy, Tomb Raider, Grand Theft Auto, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, and Abe's Exodus, The Legacy of Kain, Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, Tekken 2 and 3, and Siphon Filter. While the N64 had Super Mario 64, Star Fox 64, Wave Race 64, Mario Kart 64, GoldenEye 007, Perfect Dark, Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Kazooie, F-Zero X, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Paper Mario, Pokemon Snap, and Stadium 1 and 2, Mario Party 1, 2, and 3, Super Smash Bros., the Turok games, and The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and Majora's Mask. And there's also some really fun wrestling games on N64. So it's really tough to figure out which game library is better because they're both great. The PlayStation had really good third-party support, and the N64 didn't really have any good third-party support due to sticking with cartridges instead of CDs, and most developers such as Capcom, Konami, and more famously Squaresoft left Nintendo to go develop games for the PlayStation instead of the Nintendo 64. For example, the PlayStation got Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is one of the best Castlevania games of all time, while the N64 got 2 3D Castlevania games instead, and spoilers, they're not very good. The PlayStation also got Final Fantasy VII, which is still one of the greatest RPGs of all time, and the PlayStation had some great 3D platformers and puzzle-solving games such as Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, and Spyro the Dragon. The third-party games that are released on both platforms were often better on the PlayStation than the N64, besides from a few exceptions. For example, the Tony Hawk games were way better on the PlayStation compared to the N64, and Mortal Kombat Trilogy looked and sounded better on the PlayStation, but people preferred the N64 version due to the no load times on cartridges. And speaking of N64, the N64 had strong first and second party support with great games coming from Nintendo and Rare. The N64 had some great FPS games such as Turok, GoldenEye 007, and Perfect Dark, and all those games set the standards for FPS games on console, and every PlayStation player wanted GoldenEye 007, but instead got Tomorrow Never Dies, which wasn't the same. The N64 had some really fun racing and party games such as Mario Kart 64, F-Zero X, Mario Party 1, 2, and 3, Super Smash Bros., and Diddy Kong Racing. And there's some really fun sports games such as 1080 Snowboarding, WWF No Mercy, WCW Revenge, and WWF WrestleMania 2000, and many others. There's also the Pokemon games on N64, and Paper Mario is still a really good RPG for the platform. As much as I love games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon, I can't get enough of Super Mario 64. There's so many different worlds you can explore, and it's really fun just to screw around and explore the castle, and it's still one of my favorite games of all time. But the only game that can top Super Mario 64 is Banjo-Kazooie. Trying to collect every collectible in a world is just so addicting, and I had trouble shutting off the game once I got enough footage for this video. The N64 also had The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, which is, if not, one of the greatest games ever made. And the N64 had Star Fox 64, which has still stood the test of time and is still really fun to play. The PlayStation also had more sports games, which I'll give you that. You can keep your sports games, but if you like sports games, then the PlayStation is your console of choice. The PlayStation had more exclusive fighting games such as Battle Arena Toshinden, Tekken, and Street Fighter Alpha 3. And the only other exclusive fighting game that the N64 had besides Super Smash Bros. Was Killer Instinct Gold, and that was the only exclusive fighter that was any good. The PlayStation also had some really good survival horror games such as Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, and Silent Hill, and one of the only survival horror games that were on the N64 was a port of Resident Evil 2, which came on a massive 64 megabyte cartridge. Both of the game libraries are great, and it's really hard to figure out which one is better. The winner for games is a tie. It's a matter of preference on which library you like better. Final round. Game packaging. For the final round, I decided to compare the packaging for both consoles, and I know it's a very minor thing, but it's nice to keep your games in like some type of protection. But anyway, the PlayStation in its first year used the exact same long box cases from the Sega CD and Sega Saturn, and those cases are very fragile and can break easily if you're not careful. And for some reason, Sony later started using cardboard version of the long box cases, and those can fall apart from just using them. A year after launch, the long boxes were replaced with CD jewel cases, and this is more like it. I do prefer the jewel cases more than the long boxes, but the cases are still fragile and could get damaged if you're not careful. But anyway, the N64 still uses the cardboard boxes just like its predecessors, and it uses the exact same box design from the Super Nintendo, but the cardboard boxes often get in the way and people often throw away the boxes. And that's why getting a N64 game complete in box is very hard to come by, so the winner for game packaging goes to PlayStation. Well folks, that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I had a lot of fun making this video. Personally, I think N64 is better because of all the memories I had with the console, and it's one of my favorite consoles of all time. Like, if you have different thoughts, then let me know in the comments. Until next time, thank you for watching. Bye.